Hey there, trail trekkers and tall tale seekers. You're tuned in to the 406 Life, the podcast where Montana Max, your Bigfoot buddy and outlaw gear mascot, yeah, that's me, leads you through the wild, weird, and wonderful corners of Montana. Each week we share stories, legends, and laughs from the last best place. So grab your boots and sense of adventure, because we're about to make some Montana-sized memories. This episode's powered by Outlaw Gear, where rebels get their style. Want to look legendary? Mosey over to I'mAnOutlaw.com and claim your outlaw status. Now I've been in these mountains long enough to know the difference between a place and a story about a place. And Montana's got one of the best stories going right now. You've seen it. Golden light on the ridgeline. Open country rolling out in every direction. Maybe a horse. Nobody around for miles. The whole thing looks like something you'd hang on a wall. And here's the thing. That's not entirely wrong. I've watched sunrises from elevations most people will never reach. I've seen fog lift off a valley so slow and quiet it almost hurts to watch. This place is genuinely something. I'm not here to tell you it isn't. What I am here to do is fill in the rest of the picture. Because the version of Montana that lives on the internet, the one getting pinned and shared and turned into a moving plan, it's real in the way a highlight reel is real. It's all there. It's just not all of it. So today we're talking about Montana versus the internet's Montana. Not to talk the place down, but because if you're gonna love it, or move to it, or visit it, or just understand it, you ought to know what you're actually dealing with. Before we get into it, I've got one quick ask. If you've been listening to this show and you think it's worth something, take 30 seconds and leave us a review. Share the episode with somebody. Tell a friend. Here's my honest pitch. I am a several hundred-year-old creature living in the Montana backcountry, and even I need a little help being found. The algorithm doesn't do favors. Reviews are how people who actually care about this state find a show like this one, so if it's been worth your time, pass it along. I'd be grateful. Now, let's get into it. Let's start with the emptiness question because that comes up more than anything else. Montana is the fourth largest state in the country and ranks somewhere around 43rd or 44th in population. About 7.5 people per square mile. So the internet calls it wide open, untouched, empty. And in some places, that is dead accurate. I'm talking about Garfield County out in the east, about 0.3 of a person per square mile. I have spent time out there. It is quiet in a way that gets inside you. Petroleum County, Prairie County, Treasure County. You go east and you will find the lonesome that people are searching for. That part is real. But here's what people don't know, and it matters. A large share of Montana's population and jobs are packed into a handful of western cities. Billings, Missoula, Bozeman, Kalispell, Great Falls, Helena, Butte. You head toward those western valleys, and the empty wilderness story starts falling apart pretty fast. And here's the other thing. A big portion of that gorgeous open land everybody's moving here for. It's federal ground, national forests, wilderness areas, Bureau of Land Management. You can visit it. You can hike it. You can stand in the middle of it and feel very small and very grateful. But you cannot buy it. You cannot build on it. And more than a few people have shown up here with big plans and a real estate budget, looked out at that view, and then had someone gently explain the land ownership situation to them. That's always a fun conversation to watch from the trees. Now let's talk about the thing everybody brings up eventually. The television show, Yellowstone, the Paramount series, Kevin Costner, belt buckles, dramatic family dispute set against a mountain backdrop. That show turned Montana into a lifestyle brand for people who had never set foot here, and the numbers are real. A University of Montana study credited the series with drawing around 2.1 million visitors in 2021 alone, and somewhere between $730 and $750 million in combined visitor and production spending. The study body and the university's own headline couldn't quite agree on the exact number, which I find a little funny. But either way, it's a lot of money, and it's real. But here's what local writers and economists will actually tell you when you press them. The show shaped the image. The show is not what shaped the population boom. COVID did that, remote work did that, retirement did that. Boise, Idaho is booming on the exact same timeline, and nobody's making a prestige Western set in Boise. And I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't mention that University of Montana study was funded in part by Paramount, the studio that makes the show, the studio that profits when Montana gets popular. So just hold that. Montana novelist Russell Rowland said it plainly. He said, "There's a stark contrast between people who love this place in theory and people who love it because it is part of who they are." And that's the real divide the show widened. Not between locals and tourists exactly, but between people who see Montana as an idea and people who live here as a fact. One Bozeman business owner told the Washington Post the show isn't showing the hard days, the days when it's below zero and the calves are frozen, because those days don't get the ratings. Those days are just Tuesday. Ready for your next Montana home? Visit mostwantedrealestate.net, because that's how the West is sold. Now here's something worth paying attention to. The Montana the internet shows you is a very specific slice of this state. And there are two parts of the picture it almost always gets wrong. First, the cowboy. The internet loves a cowboy, and Montana has become the cowboy capital of the American imagination. Belt buckles, boots, somebody leaning on a fence post looking like they've got something important to think about. Now, real ranching absolutely exists here. There are people in this state doing brutally hard, highly skilled work in conditions that would send most of us back inside before breakfast. That life is real, and it deserves respect. What's less real is the idea that it's everywhere. Spend a Tuesday in Bozeman and you're just as likely to see someone in Patagonia with a cold brew and a laptop open to Zoom. The cowboy hat at the brewery might belong to a lawyer. The boots might never have crossed a fence line. The people actually making a living on horseback usually aren't spending much time curating the Montana aesthetic online. They're busy making a living. And the numbers back that up. Agriculture, mining, and logging together account for a relatively small share of Montana jobs. Healthcare, retail, government, tourism. Those sectors employ far more people than the image most outsiders carry around in their heads. The cowboy is real. The idea that Montana still runs on a cowboy economy. That's mostly the brand. The second thing the internet leaves out is half the state. Scroll through social media and you'd think Montana begins at Glacier National Park and ends somewhere around Bozeman, Glacier, Whitefish, the Flathead Valley, Missoula. Those mountain towns photograph beautifully and they dominate the conversation, but head east, and you're in a different Montana. The mountains give way to high plains that seem to stretch forever. The Missouri River breaks, carved through country that remains some of the most spectacular and least visited landscape in America. Small towns where the grain elevator still towers over everything else. Communities that have been there for generations and aren't particularly interested in becoming the next travel destination. Garfield County averages about 0.3 of a person per square mile. Petroleum County, Prairie County, Treasure County. Drive those roads and you'll find a version of Montana that almost never shows up on Instagram. It's quiet, not mountain quiet, plains quiet. A different kind of silence, wider, slower, older somehow, And the people out there are watching the western half of the state change in ways that don't always make the news, because the cameras aren't pointed east. They're pointed at going to the Sun Road. Montana has never been one place. It's mountains and plains, ranch country and college towns, tourism and wheat fields, boom towns and places where not much has changed in 50 years. The internet tends to sell one version of Montana because it's the easiest one to photograph. The rest of the state is still there. You just have to drive a little farther to find it. Let's talk about weather for a minute. Because the internet's version of Montana is essentially 68 degrees, partly sunny, excellent lighting. And we do get those days. Beautiful days. Days where you understand completely why people pull up stakes and move here. Montana also holds the contiguous United States cold temperature record. -70 degrees Fahrenheit, Rogers Pass, January 20th, 1954. And before you say that was a long time ago, in January 2024, Judith Peak recorded a wind chill of -74 degrees. That is not ancient history. That is recent. And in January 1916, the town of Browning saw the temperature drop 100 degrees in 24 hours. 44 above to 56 below. That is still a United States record. 100-degree swing in one day. Then summers bring the opposite problem. Wildfire smoke. The American Lung Association's 2026 State of the Air report ranked Missoula 26th worst in the country for short-term particle pollution. A lot of that is wildfire smoke that comes down into the western valleys and sits for days. The clear blue sky aesthetic assumes you're here on the right day. That's not guaranteed. Need shipping, shredding, prints, or a real street address? Helena's locally owned and operated the UPS store has you covered, located at 2047 North Last Chance Gulch. Stop by and get it done right. Now housing. I know, but it's the thing locals are actually living with every day, so we're going to spend a minute on it. Montana has become one of the nation's least affordable housing markets when you compare home prices to what people actually earn here. The median home sales price rose roughly 90% between 2018 and 2023. 90%. Median household incomes over that same stretch rose about 28%. You do that math and it is not a comfortable number. By 2024, a typical Montana home was sitting around $467,000 to $470,000 statewide. In Bozeman, single-family homes hit a record $810,000. In Whitefish, prices doubled toward $1 million. About 45 to 46% of renters in this state are cost-burdened. Teachers, nurses, firefighters, the people who run Montana towns from the inside, they are getting squeezed out of the same towns they built. The remote workers who drove a lot of this have largely cooled off. Net in migration peaked around 21,000 people in 2021 and dropped to around 10,000 by 2023. By 2025, Montana's population growth had slowed to one of its lowest rates in 25 years. But the prices those newcomers pushed up, those did not follow them back out. The state has passed real housing reform. 2023. Expanded in 2025. Upheld by the Montana Supreme Court in March 2026. There's movement. But the gap between what things cost and what people earn is still wide. And it's the number one thing people who actually live here are dealing with. Now here's something the internet's version of Montana leaves out almost entirely. This state is home to 7 tribal nations and 7 reservations. The Blackfeet Nation, the Crow Tribe, the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes on the Flathead Reservation, Fort Belknap, Fort Peck, Northern Cheyenne, Rocky Boys, and the Little Shell tribe of Chippewa Indians, which received federal recognition in 2019. These aren't historical landmarks. They aren't museum exhibits. They are living communities, living cultures, living governments. The native presence in Montana isn't part of the past. It's part of the present. And if the Montana you've been shown online doesn't include that, then you haven't been shown Montana. These nations have shaped this place for centuries, and they continue to shape it today. You can't understand Montana without understanding the people who were here first and who are still here now. They aren't separate from Montana's story. They are Montana's story. Montana wages sit at about 72% of the national average per Bureau of Economic Analysis data. Tourism supports roughly 1 in every 15 Montana workers, and most of those are modest-wage hospitality jobs. Many counties face child care shortages, limited health care access, long distances to basic services. This is the Montana that doesn't get 30,000 likes on a Sunday morning, but it's the one that actual Montanans navigate every single day. There's a phrase that floats around this state, the last best place. It started as a literary anthology title in 1988, turned into a marketing slogan. A Las Vegas businessman actually tried to trademark it for his resort, fought that through the courts for years. The Patent and Trademark Office permanently denied it in 2012. You cannot trademark Montana's identity, even when a lot of people keep trying to. The people who come here chasing the idea of Montana and the people who were already here, who built the schools, dug the wells, buried their people in the churchyards, they are not experiencing the same state. And that gap is real. It's widening. Montana doesn't change for you. It never has. If you show up expecting the feed version, you're going to spend a lot of time confused and cold. If you show up ready to meet the actual place, the complicated, staggering, expensive, occasionally smoke-filled, 2,000-pound bison having actual place, well, that's a different trip altogether, and it is absolutely worth taking. If you want to go deeper on any of this, the numbers, the housing data, the full breakdown of the Yellowstone study, the Eastern Montana nobody talks about, all of it, head over to the406life.com. The full blog post is there with every source linked. We don't just tell you things on this show. We show you where they came from. And one more thing before I let you go. Leave us a review. Share this episode. I know I already asked, and I'm asking again because that's just where we are. Here's the truth. A Bigfoot with a podcast is not a thing the algorithm was designed to promote. I am working against some real structural disadvantages here. Reviews help people find this show. Shares help people find this show. And if you've made it all the way to the end of this episode, you clearly have good taste and strong opinions, and the people in your life probably trust your recommendations. Use that. Point them toward the 406 Life. I'm Montana Max, and I'll be out on the ridge. You know where to find me, or more accurately, you won't. But the show will be right here next Tuesday. Take care of yourselves out there, and maybe don't kick the bison. Got a Montana story, business, or unsolved mystery you want on the show? Head to the406life.com and drop me a line. No smoke signals required. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss a stomp, stumble, or tall tale. Tell your friends, tell your grandma, heck, tell that guy who swears he saw me near Whitefish. I was just buying donuts, all right? Until next time, keep it outrageous, keep it kind, and keep living the 406 life. Montana Max, over and out.
That's the